So the eventual director of Highlander makes his feature film directorial debut, with a film about a monstrous pig rampaging through the Australian outback, and something that was destined to become a cult classic, with Razorback. In the Australian outback, Jake Cullen's babysitting his grandson when a razorback pig the size of a rhino gores through his home, taking the child away in the rampage, leaving him distraught and accused of murdering the child. However, a lack of substantial evidence finds him acquitted and sets him on a 2-year vendetta to find the monster that ruined his life. In New York, American wildlife reporter Beth Winters leaves her husband Carl. The following reports that kangaroo hunting is leading to the extinction of the species. However, when she gets in too close to Benny and Dicko Baker, who work for Pet Pack, illegally processing pet food from the slain wildlife, she is salaciously attacked by them on the roadside until the massive boar arrives and tears her apart. With Beth reported as missing, Carl makes a long journey down under to investigate what happened to his wife. Talking with Jake Cullen, he is eventually led to the despicable guys at Pet Pack, where he claims to be visiting from Canada. He slyly hooks up with them on a kangaroo hunt until he spoils a potential kill, and then they abandon him in the cold of night. Over the next day, he hallucinates in the extreme heat with no provisions, until he lands at the doorstep of Sarah Cameron, who has been aiding Jake through the use of trackers to hunt down a savage beast. While Carl recovers with Sarah by his side, Jake encounters the razorback again near a watering hole. While he's unable to kill it, he does find Beth's wedding ring in its droppings, verifying to Carl Winters his wife was killed by the boar. Later, Benny and Dicko overhear a radio conversation revealing Beth's fate and fear that they will be implicated in her death. Thus, they batter Jake that night by busting his knees and leaving him in the wilderness and at the mercy of the hulking pig. This sends Carl and Sarah in pursuit of the abhorrent Pet Pack duo back to their processing plant, but no sanctuary will be found as the razorback comes barreling towards everyone, ready to consume them whole. So Razorback starts released in its native country of Australia on April 19, 1984, and later the United States released through Warner Brothers on November 14th of the same year. And unfortunately, it's a film that really just didn't catch on. The reviews were kind of mixed to positive across the board in different countries, and the box office just never came to the entire film. United States audiences really didn't grasp onto the film. A lot of the Australian slang and dialect and whatnot really kind of got a little bit lost on certain audiences. Didn't really connect. And Warner Brothers, despite being very enthusiastic about the entire production, as they were through the whole thing, wasn't something they picked up after the fact. They're very much closely involved with watching the film as it's being produced and stuff like that. Really just never really made good on promises of pushing the film, promoting it very well, finding a way to an angle to kind of promote it towards audiences, to get it out there in a very wide fashion. So things really kind of fell off to such a degree, and that's kind of a thing with Russell Mulcahy films. When you get up to Highlander and a couple other things he had early in his career, U.S. didn't quite get it, but like Europe would kind of latch on to whatever his style was, what he was doing with the films, or something. That audience in Europe kind of grasped onto his artistic style and his way of telling the story in such a visually dynamic type of way, really connected there overall. But the film was purportedly produced on a budget between 4.8 million to about 5.5 million Australian dollars. So you'd think that'd be kind of a good amount of money to put in the whole thing, but just it didn't even gross back like $1 million altogether across different areas or whatnot, different marks and stuff like that. So a film that really just seemed like there was a lot of ambition behind the entire film. A lot of people were like so gung-ho when they were making the film, watching dailies and seeing this gorgeous vision from Russell Mulcahy splashed across the screen, but it really just didn't come together overall. There's a lot of different cogs in the entire film that just didn't quite mesh and quite click together, despite having a lot of people who were very much appreciative of being involved with the film, thought there was a lot of good things involved with it when they were getting into it. But the fact of the matter is that the entire genesis of the entire production here starts out with the novel from Peter Brennan from 1981 that was adapted into this film by screenwriter Everett DeRoche. And reading up on things I could find a little bit from people like talking about reviews on different sites and whatnot, apparently there's a lot of like It's almost equated to Peter Benchley's Jaws novel, where Steven Spielberg took that novel but kind of stripped out some odd elements, the entire thing, kind of stripped it down to the masterpiece it is. This one has a lot more of those types of elements. There's like a mafia thing, there's crime, and there's different erotic thriller mystery type of things going on. It has a hell of a lot less to do with the Razorback in the whole thing, which is a very minimal part of the plot. So Everett DeRoche goes into this entire thing and really kind of just focuses on the monstrous pig aspect. It's kind of this, you can focus in on that and make that a very compelling creature feature monster movie horror film. You can find that element and kind of grasp the entire thing and put it together a nice 90 to 100 or so minute film to really kind of grasp onto this like an easy thing to sell. As the film's been kind of known as like Jaws on Trotters. That's the entire name of their documentary in the film. It's kind of a thing that's kind of stuck onto the film over time and whatnot. They looked at Jaws like, yeah, we could do certain things like Jaws on land or something else like that and grasp onto the entire idea here. So there are certain elements in the entire film that really kind of latch on. It's like there's a certain Jaws element here, stuff like that, where you got this wonderful character of Jake Cullen I'll get to later on. It's very much a little bit of a quaint allegory entire film here, but certainly you can see those elements. You kind of find kind of a core quality to kind of grasp out of the entire novel and plant it into this much more seemingly marketable sort of horror-esque sort of package and whatnot. But the entire thing gets up from producer Hal McElroy, and he just kind of moves this whole thing along to the point where you got Russell Mulcahy here. First feature film. He's done some short films, especially been doing a lot of music videos. He did stuff for Billy Joel and Fleetwood Mac and Kim Carnes and Bonnie Tyler, but most importantly, Elton John and Duran Duran, who are like one of the biggest things to get out of the early MTV age. He was doing tons of music videos for them, and probably had just done the one for Hungry Like the Wolf, which is one of the biggest hits they ever had. And so he just done that thing. He was going off to London to deal with some other work or whatnot, but then he got called up about this project. It's like, how do you feel like doing a horror film in Australia? It's like, absolutely. Interesting idea. I'll have to go on this whole thing. So a lot of people signed on to the film despite having a script that some people kind of look at in retrospect like clunky dialogue, a lot of things where characters aren't quite as delineated, some things are not quite as well defined. There's not as much character development as there is kind of like plot development. And the film's production took place in New South Wales, Australia, primarily in Broken Hill, but the climax of the film actually was moved over to a soundstage in Sydney, where they had a lot more control of the situation, where they're kind of running out of time and money in that regard, so they really wanted to focus it on some place that was controllable and they kind of work a little bit better than certain environment they had down there. Because the fact of the matter is, we were shooting out in the outback. It was either sizzling hot or freezing cold at night. And so during the days, everyone's burning up and just sweltering to that degree, and everyone at night, you can't put on nearly enough layers to just keep you warm and not freeze your fingers off and stuff like that. So, very extreme conditions in the entire film, but from what I can tell, no one really had like a flare-up of stress and stuff like that. Everyone kind of worked together fairly well in that regard. No one really kind of blew up with one another here and there and everywhere, so everyone was kind of amicable working on the film together, just kind of warring through these environmental conditions to such a kind of like collective degree in that regard. And it took Russell Mulcahy a little bit of a time because he hadn't done like narrative film that much. He really been working on like a marketing level in that regard as a music video director with a few short films to his credit. And so kind of took a little while before the actors really kind of got it a little bit deeper into it to kind of like maybe not focus so much on the aesthetics of the whole thing, kind of work more with the actors, kind of work how the scene can flow and the rhythms of the scene, stuff like that, and kind of maybe work the dialogue around just a little bit here and there to make it a little bit more natural to a certain degree. So this is kind of definitely kind of a rough and tumble sort of production in that regard. Even though it seems like $5.5 million or 4.8 whatnot, it seemed like a pretty nice, substantial budget. I mean, there's plenty of slasher films that are being made on much less of a budget in that regard in the United States, stuff like that. So you'd think this would be a pretty good budget to really have a lot of stuff at their disposal, but things really did kind of get to a certain point where they were really kind of running out of time, running out of money, and that's really why they kind of moved things down and shot the entire climax, which is the last thing being shot in the entire film, to those sound stages. And one of the main things that contributes to that is the fact that effects man Bob McCarran actually designed 4 actual Razorbacks for the entire film for them to use, and started with a little maquette that kind of was being worked on before Russell Mulcahy got really deeply involved in the whole thing, but once he approved it, went off and made the entire full-size ones, and the most expensive one was the full animatronic one where they actually used it for like stampeding and actually moving the thing on camera from like one point to another. That version cost them $250,000 to construct and appears for less than 1 second in the film in that capacity, because despite the fact they could still use it with the head turning and the jaw and stuff like that up close, having it move around the set and stuff like that just became unwieldy. It didn't look very convincing, stuff like that. So they kind of did everything they could to kind of block it out and hide it in some places here and there and just not really use it to that great degree. So a lot of money was spent on something that didn't get much of a return investment on in terms of how it got used in the film, because they just couldn't use it to the extent that they needed to. And you can definitely see, as I'll get to much later on, there's a lot of problems involved with trying to use something that doesn't quite look quite as convincing on screen when you kind of have it as a, like, showing it in its full capacity on the entire screen. Kind of going back to Jaws, well, the shark didn't work quite so well, but they could at least show the entire shark when they had to sell the thread of the whole thing. Not as much in Razorback, where they could actually pull the camera back and show the thing in its full size. A lot of problems in that regard. So they spent a lot of money on that, and a lot of the effects, and a lot of the locations, and the style of the film. But certain other things kind of fell off to certain degrees. But talking about the style in the entire film, cinematographer Dean Simler, this guy just worked on Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior. Anyone who's seen that knows it's one of the biggest films that came out of Australia at this point in time. And just everyone was extremely impressed by the work done in that film by pretty much everyone. And the fact is, they got this guy involved in this thing. Already worked in Australia. They knows kind of the scenery to a certain degree, but not as well as what Mulcahy really wanted to get to a certain way. But the fact is, these guys were such a perfect pair together. They just so melded so well on set. They just knew so much exactly what one and the other could do and what they wanted to get and all the things they want to shoot and on different ways they want to do it. Grab these lenses, get this color going, get this composition in this certain way, just like everything perfectly. And the fact of the matter is, Dean Simler won an award from the Australian Cinematographer Society and from the Australian Film Institute for his work on this film, then goes off to Hollywood, goes off and wins an Oscar for shooting Dances with Wolves, then does stuff like Last Action Hero, Waterworld, he did Super Mario Brothers, he did Apocalypto, he did a whole bunch of random films here and there like Young Guns 1 and 2, just tons of different films, just a wide berth of different things he would end up doing in his Hollywood career. Amazing type of stuff, and it starts with The Road Warrior, but continues on with this film, and just the fact is, it's a stunning film. My God. If you want to talk about cinematography reels, this film would go completely, every shot in this film would go on this guy's cinematography reel in 1984. It's a brilliantly shot film with such vibrant imagination just manifests on screen. I can't even show you everything, because every shot in this film has the money on screen with it. Every frame of this film has that quality to it. Russell Mulcahy painting this film gorgeously. All the colors, the vibrancy he taps into in this entire film, especially getting this weird dream sequence that Gregory Harrison's character gets in the middle of the film here, where he's out in the outback and probably heat stroke or God knows whatever's going on to him. He gets in this bizarre, like, acid trip of a lucid dream sequence that's just out of control. Just everything they did, where they did like glass paintings over the frame and stuff like that to get these like weird cracks in the entire ground or whatnot. All these interesting weird dynamics they had going on with the colors and the shades of everything going on, all the weird type of angles that had happening, just like everything just burst out of this film with just a living, breathing imagination so much. It's like, it's just such an amazing film. And a lot of people kind of look at like his later work, kind of like praise his stuff where he does like the 1:8:5 ratio or whatnot, where he's using the certain spherical wide angle lenses like Highlander or The Shadow or something else like that. I think this thing looks phenomenally good in CinemaScope. The way he uses the entire frame in this whole thing, those Panavision lenses look absolutely stunning. The fact that he has these wonderful sweeping camera angles where you get across the entire landscape, or you can just move around all the type of stuff in the scene. It just has so much of a wide, just birth the entire thing. Everything just sprawls out so much through the entire landscape this film has. It's just like amplifies the scenery that he has so much with the sunsets and the backlights and all these interesting little things he has going on with whether it's the gels or the lenses or the filters on the lenses, anything he's got going on, it's just bursting through. It looks fantastic. And of course, he does know his visual storytelling. It's not just cool shots and interesting little colors or something else like that. He does block out everything. He puts together these scenes, even though he doesn't really do a lot of storyboards at this point in time. He kind of gets on the scene, it kind of gets the moment or the imagery or something like that strikes him. They kind of adapt to the entire scenery they have there and kind of take on that inspiration in the moment. But he's still blocking out the scene so great. Everything that happens when you have a lot of the action going on, the whole thing really is still put together very well in that time of way of choosing the right shots in some places here and there. And though I do have some problems with the editing later on, but the fact is the editing also got an award from the Australian Film Institute and stuff like that at the same time. So it got many nominations from that body, but editing and the cinematography won that award in that year. So great thing in that regard. But kind of transition over to the cast. It's a very interesting cast of so many things. It's got, of course, a lot of native Australian actors, but got some Westerners in the entire film here because you got Gregory Harrison, very interesting actor. The one thing was, Mulcahy was kind of looking towards like Jeff Bridges, who we know today is like brilliant actor, Oscar caliber actor in that type of way, and he's been around since like the 70s or something else like that. And he'd been well established, but Hal McElroy didn't feel like he had international appeal for some reason or whatnot. I don't know if he really gotten that many hits under his belt to really have that much of a thing. But when we look at Gregory Harrison, who was mainly a TV actor at the time, he worked on Trapper John MD, which is kind of a spin-off from MASH, whether it's the MASH film or the TV series, a little bit indecisive in that regard. There were some lawsuits involved, the whole thing. It makes it a little muddy, but he was a steady working actor, and he was kind of like in between seasons. He was kind of looking for feature film roles. He wanted to move into something else besides TV and kind of court some things that are a little bit different to him and stuff like that. And he thought this was a very exciting prospect for him to delve into. He always wanted to go to Australia, wanted to see that scenery, kind of work in that country or whatnot. And they give him a very unique opportunity to do the whole thing. And him as Carl Winters in the entire film, where this story kind of starts off in the second act because you got Judy Morris as his wife, Beth Winters, going off to Australia, kind of investigating this entire thing about kangaroos being hunted to the point of extinction, and investigating things here and there. And she gets offed when she runs into the Razorback and stuff like that. So when he steps into our film, I think he's a very good actor. I think he very much fits this thing as being a character that doesn't fit in this land. This guy is in this foreign land, doesn't know anything really about the ins and outs of certain things, of the society, the dialects and stuff like that, how things work out here. Completely alien to him. I like how they play that so much with the scenery they have, especially that dream sequence, like I said, and stuff like that. Really just injects him into a world that's completely at odds with who he is and stuff like that. He's just completely lost in this entire world. So I like that. I like the quality that he is kind of this out of place sort of character, and he plays it very well. I like the fact that he's very affable. He's very relatable. He's very much an everyman type of character, just thrust into a very odd, bizarre situation in a land he just has no business really being into. But I like so much what he does in the entire film. He makes himself very much that type of character you can be empathetic with, you can connect with him, feel what he's feeling, and just kind of go along in the journey with him through this land that maybe be a bit bizarre for everyone to go into and stuff like that. So he's a good actor. He does work with everyone very well on screen. It's like Bill Kerr works well with him. Judy Morris, very much a good scene with her early on in the film to kind of establish that relationship. But then when he has to transition to much more of a different relationship with Arkie Whiteley in the entire film later on, to build a bit of a different relationship with her, it all comes out very much effortlessly. Just so very much a good actor who brings forth the qualities you need to and steps up his game when the film demands it. We get up to that final act, he has to be a bit more action proactive type of character where he has to go up against these pet characters and goes up against the Razorback and stuff like that, goes up to that final sequence completely convincing, and they don't turn him into some kind of gun-toting sort of action here or whatnot where you're kind of blowing people away. You still see a little bit of that regular man type of character in there where he's kind of got one of the guys up with a shotgun or whatnot, doesn't really pull the trigger, can't really pull himself to just kill the guy in cold blood. And so I like that sort of little touch in the entire film. They don't veer him off in that regard. They still maintain that compassionate character to such a degree that you built up the entire film. So wonderful work from him, really solid type of stuff, but again, Judy Morris does a really fantastic job. She's a British actress, and apparently a lot of people who are familiar with her work as a British actress, kind of like, we're not convinced of you being American in this entire film, but I got no problem with it. No one else who was American had any problem with her portraying an American character. She does a really nice job. I like the fact that she's very convincing in the entire role. She feels very genuine. I like the quality that she has a compassionate side, but she's also very much kind of has a bit of a conviction in that regard. She is that American journalist type of character in our film. You feel like she's right off the TV screen. Something you would turn on the news and she would be right there reporting on the hard news stories. She feels very much exactly like that type of character, and she slips in so very well. I like the fact that she doesn't quite cower or whatnot when she's kind of dealing with the guys at the pub and stuff like that, where they're being a little bit more maybe surly or something else like that or whatnot. She's got a little bit of a toughness to her some places here and there. So in the little bit of screen time she has, that first 20 minutes or so in the entire film, she does establish a very solid type of character there that you can define and see the relationship she has with her husband and see how that entire thing kind of instigates and catalyzes the entire progression of the events of the entire film there. So really solid work from her in the entire film. I like what she brings to the entire role. Like I said, it's very much different from what Arkie Whiteley is doing later on in the film, as building up these two different love interests at different points in time in the life of Carl Winters. So you got the wife there, who has very much kind of a stern but a little bit of a vulnerable side to her in a certain way. But you get to Arkie Whiteley later on as Sarah Cameron. She does have a bit more of a softer side. She's a little bit more heartfelt to a certain degree. It's a little bit more of a softer performance, kind of dealing with the grieving husband and stuff like that. It kind of building up not like a strong romantic relationship that regard, not pushing it so hard, but you have a little bit of a little bit more of a subtle type of progression with their characters. But do have very good chemistry overall to really nail that type of thing and kind of create that bond between the characters there. I like that kind of way they go about that and really act those scenes very nicely. I like all those different dynamics between all these different characters very, very well. But the fact of the matter is, Bill Kerr is the freaking actor in this entire film as the character of Jake Cullen. Man, oh man, I was trying to pin down maybe like an American allegory to this entire actor or whatnot. I was like thinking like, if you melded like Scott Glenn with a little bit of Sam Elliott, with a splash of Robert Shaw's Quint, it's about what you get here with his performance, and he's fantastic. This guy apparently was a total pro, old season pro the entire game here. Fantastic. He was fantastic on set. The guy's fantastic in the entire film because this guy's the driving force. You need a guy that has this depth of texture all over him, just everything, all over him, inside and out, so much. This guy's just living, breathing character texture to such a great degree in this whole thing. I like the fact that he's got great dialogue. It's just such that biting intensity in the entire screen. It's like this guy is said from the very first scene in the film, the Razorback bored through the entire house, took the kid with him, and all the type of stuff that just builds up this entire thing where he got accused of killing the kid, put on trial, but kind of got acquitted because there wasn't enough evidence to the whole thing, and now he's just like dead set, hunting him, 100% all the time, just out there, no matter what. And I like the fact that like, there's just something about blasting the shit out of a Razorback that just brightens up my whole day. This guy's just got the best stuff in the entire film, and he's just milking that so nicely. I just love just the saturation of this character is so penetrating. Just love seeing everything he does, every line delivery, every piece he has in the entire film, where he's moving his eyes, or he's not really doing much in the entire film, but he's got that subtle intensity. It's just like this granite on screen that just pulls you into the entire thing. Fantastic. He's fantastic as Jake Cullen. All these different things, like you just got this guy as this gravitas in the entire film, just flashed on. He could have carried the entire film on his own, 100%. He could have turned this into just like him hunting the entire thing, 90 minutes of the whole thing, and he would have carried it without a goddamn problems. Would have made a badass film whatsoever. But I like the fact that he does have that splash of Quint in him, and you do see like, yeah, he's gonna have to bite it similar to Quint later on in the entire film, but not quite the same way. It's like the fact that these pet guys, they kind of get paranoid about certain things, about him being out here, doing certain things, maybe talk to certain people, and they kind of kneecap him and leave him out there to die or whatnot. Then he's almost completely helpless when the goddamn boar comes to get him and just rampage the entire thing. It's like all that type of stuff, just like incredible powerhouse type of stuff. He's one of the most powerhouse actors the entire film could ever imagine to get. He's perfect casting, just like couldn't get any better whatsoever. The most perfect casting in the entire world for this role. He's the best thing in it. Fantastic type of stuff. And being such as this guy is like, he was like a stage actor and stuff like that. He was like, learn the lines. Just thorough professional type of stuff. When he goes up against like one of these petback guys, which was one was David Arkie with, a lot of people are like saying like he has this like brilliant mind of an actor or whatnot, but he was such a unwieldy type of imagination on set or whatnot, where he'd constantly be changing outfits and whatnot in between takes and stuff like that, making a real mess of things in that regard. But it's one of these eclectic personalities that when you put this like rock solid sort of actor who's like been at it for decades and whatnot, and this guy's just a little bit more off the handle, kind of throwing things back and forth, a little bit more improvisational, kind of working it off with different slang and stuff like that. Maybe a little bit of fiction or whatnot, but never really blew up to something else like that. Apparently, like, Kerr would kind of like maybe step off the scene with a little bit of a gripe or whatnot, but then kind of circle back around and nail the scene after that point in time. So, a little bit of different acting styles in certain places, but they still maintained that quality with whatever resources were happening. That was like the first day of production, and Mulcahy's kind of working with these two drastically different actors in this one scene that doesn't last that long, but it's at least something enough to kind of play things off to certain degrees and whatnot. But this cast just really knocks it out of the park. They really, you know, they didn't have as much, as Gregory Harrison kind of says, as much delineation between characters, not as much of a overall character development. There's a lot of scenes where like you're kind of explaining things, kind of like bringing people up the speed of like what this is and what this is and what that is and whatnot, who Jake Cullen is, what his history is to this guy and stuff like that, or who the Peckback guys, what they're doing and where they're going and stuff like that. Certain things are a lot of dialogue that's kind of just explaining certain things from scene to scene and whatnot, not developing the characters quite as deeply as you possibly can. But I think a lot of the actors bring their own personalities to the characters to make them very much lively characters on screen, to make them impactful to certain degrees. You know, if Mulcahy was still kind of feeling his way through how to really construct narrative and kind of work with actors and bring up performances and kind of make things work on such a character and emotional level, I still think all the pieces really kind of came together for the most part in that regard to really make those types of elements resonate for the entire film for its own sake. But moving on to the film's score here from Iva Davies, who doesn't have a whole lot of things until like film credits, would be involved many years after this with Peter Weir's Master and Commander of the Far Side of the World, that score. But he's got a much different score on this entire film because it's all mainly synthesizer based type of stuff, and it's just this awesome sound he has going on throughout the entire film here. Just like he's got these wonderfully bombastic but also some thoughtful cues he kind of weaves into the entire thing. Just like it's intense and dramatic when it really needs to be, kind of, but can also play to the choir moments as well. It's like it's really dynamic and unique sound entire thing, and you can get it on digital platforms streaming in certain places. You can't buy it on iTunes or Amazon Music, but you can stream it on Spotify, YouTube Music, and stuff like that here and there. Easy to find in that regard. And it's just like it's got such a, it's just really kind of unlike a lot of different scores. Even though there's a lot of synthesizer stuff going on in the 80s, is very just identifiable as his own type of idea in a certain way. And some places like going up to like the final reels of the entire film, he was up to like the 11th hour, getting the film edited and stuff like that, getting it off to him so he could actually apply score onto these scenes and whatnot. And he was zipping through things in a hot fashion in that regard, but it still comes off as it's a very intense, aggressive score to such a degree. It just has, like I said, it's just a unique sound the whole thing has. I can't equate it to a John Carpenter or a Tangerine Dream or anything else like that from the 80s or whatnot. It's very much its own separate piece of imagination in that regard. Just like everything going on, it's just a very unique experience getting onto this entire score or whatnot. But moving beyond that, over to talking about the climax, the effects work, stuff like that, where things really kind of get into the much more the grisly, gruesome, chunky type of stuff going on in the entire film. And apparently the film was cut down. So there's a little bit of censorship involved with the proper theatrical release of the entire film. Apparently the Australian home video version did have extended sequences of gruesome, gory type of stuff when the Razorback is attacking people and mainly killing a lot of people in certain sequences. A lot more grisly, gruesome stuff going on, much more extended death scenes in that regard. That would be nice if they could have found the actual film stock or whatnot to put it into the remastered version of the whole thing, but apparently it's been lost. They can't find it, so you only can enjoy that version in like a VHS standard def pan scan type of version of it on the Blu-rays. And the entire film really is one of the most gruesome type of things you could get onto, just like this dry, just like, again, chunky, nightmarish landscape. You get all this just gunky blood and all this goop coming out of the entire freaking Razorback, where Bob McCarran said if he would do the film over at a certain point in time, if he were to do it like today, man, he would make this thing way uglier. He'd make it like mutated with like diseases and warts and God knows whatever. You'd make it far more nightmarish in that regard. I think that would work even better to a certain degree. But the main kind of crux of the entire thing, when you kind of get into certain sequences with this Razorback, is the fact, like, they don't have as much articulation in the entire thing. The thing couldn't even turn its head back and forth. It didn't really have a neck, is what Gregory Harrison said. It could just kind of like pivot back and forth like it's a guy in a Batman cowl or whatnot. There's no neck on this thing. It can't move anywhere. So a lot of it is kind of shot in these like real tight close-ups and quick shots and here and there and stuff like that, which kind of disrupts the quality of the film to a certain degree. Even though the thing won an award for its editing work on the whole thing, still feel like some of the sequences feel a little short-changed or a little too erratic. You can't really get a sense of exactly what's going on in some places. You can follow it, but it's like one shot to the next kind of feels like it's all very kind of jarring and disconnected and stuff like that. And you don't really get as much of the actual creature on screen as you really want to when the payoffs are coming off. Whether they're goring a freaking person you care about or going after one of these detestable pick guys that are just really scummy, garbage human beings. But it's it's this indiscriminate force of nature. Even though it's this abomination, this sort of aberration of nature in a certain way, it goes off of everyone just equally. It's not this moral being in the entire film. Everyone's getting hit. Doesn't matter how good or bad of a person you are, you're getting hit, and that works towards the terror of the entire film. It really works towards that angle of being terrified or just having certain horrific sort of suspenseful moments in the entire thing when it's going up against people, whoever they might be, and it's very effective. But I do feel like, just like they do cut around a lot of different things in that regard. We use shortchange a lot of the gruesome stuff or some of the impact, kind of sporadic in how they're kind of assembling the scenes. Apparently a lot of the footage actually got left out of the entire film, so a lot of stuff they shot for the entire monster and stuff like that really got excised, really didn't get used. And again, like I said, because the thing didn't have it had some articulation because it was animatronic on one of the more expensive versions of the entire thing, but they still really couldn't shoot the thing in most of a dynamic way possible. Because maybe you thought like a couple years later, if like this was like a Stan Winston creation, man, it would be a brilliant piece of work. It'd have so much articulation, kind of similar to the Alien Queen and Aliens, but maybe a little bit further on because it wouldn't quite be as big. You'd be a bit more of this sort of tank boring through things here and there. I think there'd be a little bit more time and innovation put in the entire thing to really kind of make sure that it worked out to the absolute best qualities possible if you had someone like that involved with a big team. I feel like there's just certain shortcomings in that regard, using this as like the big crux horror element of the entire film, the big monster of the entire film, and it doesn't quite work as well on screen as you need to, that when you actually use it, you have these extreme close-ups of stuff here and there that are effective enough, but it does feel like you're just kind of obviously kind of like just trying to cut around every little piece of this thing, not to be able to show it in long takes or wide shots or something else like that. So everything's kind of like very strategically used, but it feels a little too constrained in that regard. It feels like you're kind of shortchanging the sequence because of the limitations you have with the creature. Despite the fact you spent so much time and money with it, it really didn't come off the best ways possible to be as dynamic of a thing to work with when you're shooting these sequences where you need to have a lot of flexibility in how you want to use it. They do feel like they didn't quite nail as good of an ending as they wanted to, because they're kind of like reworking it at the last minute, trying to find exactly how the best thing they could go off in was. Bob McCarran felt like, putting it through that little spinny blade type of thing didn't feel like it was as good of an idea, but they just kind of had to run and gun it because you're going to run out of money, you're going to run out of time, you got to shoot something. So the best thing you have at this point in time, just take one of the heads of one of the bores or whatnot and stick it into the entire thing and shoot it in this long shot of the thing getting chewed up. And really the sound design does a lot of heavy lifting in that regard. Using it when it's kind of like you're hearing it coming off in the distance, and when you're seeing it doing various other things, hearing the grunts and the growls and all the squealing type of things here and there, and the snarling stuff here and there, whatnot, through its snout, it helps a lot. The sound design does do a lot of heavy lifting in that regard to really sell a lot of those qualities about the thing being a living, breathing type of thing on set. But like I said, there's just a little bit of a jarring nature. I think, again, whatever the case was with the novel, whatnot, when you're doing into the screenplay, I just feel like there could have been more time, like pretty much like Gregory Harrison says, like more time to kind of distinguish the characters a little bit more, a little more depth and a little bit more development of the characters themselves. First couple of minutes or so of the film is little, after you get to that great opening sequences, it takes a little bit while to kind of get your traction into the characters and stuff like that, because there's not quite as much going on. There's not quite as much action. There's not quite as much interesting things happening until you kind of pick up the pace a little bit more towards the second act. So there's a little bit of a thing in that regard. It's like, the more you rewatch it, the more it probably moves better for you in certain degrees, but I definitely think that some of those extended gore sequences work better towards the better impact and effectiveness of what they're doing with the film. But yeah, story-wise, script-wise, it's a little janky in some places in that regard. But I think the other talents in the film, the actors so well, the cinematography, no doubt, the composer, fantastic. So many different things really bring quality to what they have, and all their compartmentalized elements kind of bring together something that's very fascinating overall. Just a very interesting film in that regard. There's not really films so much that do this in this sort of genre, that goes off and does these weird acid trip lucid dream sequences that Mulcahy throws in the middle of the film here. It's fascinating, and techniques used here, they're just stunning in that regard. Just really imaginative type of things going on. They try to inject something different and exciting and imaginative and just out there in such degrees. It's a refreshing type of film to really look at and watch it and see what it has to offer. If it clicks for you, it clicks for you. If it doesn't quite get there, I could definitely understand that. But I think it's definitely worth checking out. I mean, if you know Mulcahy's work from later on in his career, Mulcahy's had some influence and impact in some places, and he's got a certain style early in his career that's completely identifiable, and goddamn, it's never more saturated on screen than this film. Absolutely. So it's easily available now. Screen Factory's put it out in the US on a Blu-ray that has pretty much all the stuff from the Umbrella release that was put out in Australia. That's a region-free version, but it kind of omits certain things from... There was a couple excerpts of interviews that are very lengthy from another documentary that Umbrella Entertainment was able to license, but apparently they're not available in the Screen Factory release. The 4K edition that was put out by Umbrella Entertainment in 2023, I was very hyped for it, but apparently they did not apply any HDR grading on it, because I think this thing was a 4K restoration. I think it might be an inner positive or a lesser quality source beyond that, because you can see the film's a little high contrast. It's a little chunky with some of the grain in some places here and there. There's a little more artifacts and defects in the entire print in some places. And apparently the original pressing accidentally got region locked, so they had to do like this international sort of replacement program. So I would definitely check out with them directly to make sure that everything's been corrected at this point in time in terms of the region locking stuff. That's a problem for you if you're not in Australia. If you're in another region that would have that kind of problem, check with that first. But if you just get the regular Blu-ray, the picture quality, as you see in this video, is just phenomenally good. So get the Screen Factory release, get the Beyond Genres release if they still have it available separately. But anything like that, check this film out. I don't have nothing more to say. So guys, check the film out. Let me know what you feel about the film itself, about my analysis of the entire film itself. And of course, there's the Super Things feature to contribute anything directly to the channel here, along with Patreon, and your likes, comments, your subscribes, sharing links around all the different places, all the type of stuff, helps to feed the algorithm, gets more eyes on the channel, lets things kind of live and breathe and get the entire videos out further and stuff like that. So guys, thank you so much for supporting things around here, watching the videos. So thanks much. Take care. Bye-bye.